Today we're 17 and we just got to take a moment and we got to honor this. And I'm really curious, do you remember what you were like when you were 17? For some of you, that's a stretch. You're like, that was like, 40 years ago. You remember the fashion, the style, what you thought was cool, only to look back and you probably had that moment. What was I thinking? 17. So here's what I did in honor of this, and just to have some fun, I asked a few of our staff to give me a photo of them when they were 17. So the first up is Gina Keeley, and Gina is our Next Steps director, and she really is the glue around here. Like, if I get hit by a bus, y'all are gonna be fine. Someone's gonna step up here, they're gonna preach. If Gina gets hit by a bus, we're screwed. That's all I'm saying. She just does amazing ministry, Try 5, Next Steps, baptisms. All right, but here's Gina when she was 17 years old. Let's go. Look at that hair flow. That's all I'm saying. Favor ain't fair. Come on, Gina. Trying to be a hair model. All right, here's the next one. This is Gary Heidick, our executive pastor. And Gary is just celebrated his 10th year in ministry on staff at Lifepointe, which is amazing. We love Gary. He's over all of our ministries and operations. Couldn't do this without him. But this is Gary when he was 17. Come on now. Looking like Brad Pitt trying out for Ocean's 11. He's got some hair flow. I see that, a little tease action. All right, I got one more for you. This is Bob. He's our life groups and care pastor. Bob, you've lost a lot of weight since this picture, so we might need to redo this. But here's Bob looking like Buddy Holly at 17. That's a ladies' man. Look at the tie. You got to have game. You got to be really confident to rock that right there. All right, now hold on tight. Don't leave. This is me at 17 years old, right here. I know, online, you're already logging off. Sorry, Ridge. Some of you are like, I don't need Try 5. I'm done. I'm out of here. You look at that picture and you're like, I want to beat you up. You look like a kid who needs a nice punch in the face. How many of you thought that? There you go, right there. You're like, I got a lot of questions for you, okay? Number one, are those frosted tips? Okay, this is the 90s. Number two, is this a Backstreet Boys photo? And is that West Side? Are you throwing up West Side? This is the proof of God's grace. Every parent out there, hang on, keep praying for your teenager. They're gonna make it. They're gonna make it. My mom doubted, but now I show you this because here's what I think we all have in common at 17. No matter what generation you grew up in, just like me, when we were 17, we were all selfish, right? Look, I know you're 17-year-old right now. You think they're just the best thing in the world and they float in the clouds and all this stuff. But I'm telling you, they're 17 at the end of the day. I mean, a 17-year-old, a teenager, they're naturally gravitating towards inward things, selfishness. They want to do what they want to do. And that's not a bad thing. I would say that's a natural thing. And I'm telling you that because I believe that the same is true for the life cycle of any church. Lifepointe, that the older we become, the more established that we find ourselves, the more that we begin to grow. I'm telling you, it is gonna be easier to navigate and to sort of gravitate towards making this all about us. And I think that's something that we gotta fight back against the older that we get. That's why I actually miss some of those early beginning days when Lifepointe first started. Now, I don't ever claim to have planted a church. I've never planted a church before. That's a different skill set. But I was very fortunate. I've been a part of Lifepointe staff since the church was 8 months old. Matter of fact, this is the very first Sunday 17 years ago at Southwest Middle School. I mean, look at that. When you're a church plant, you have no option but to be outward focused. There were no lights, no haze, no cameras and LED walls. We literally met at Southwest Middle School in a middle school cafetorium that was overlit, where we didn't know 1 week to the next if the janitor was gonna show up and unlock the building. There's Craig and Kathy in the front row. You know what I'm talking about. You didn't know if it was gonna smell like puke or sour milk. but we loved it. It was ours. There was something exciting and fresh and evangelistic, and we were missional, and we were about the name of Jesus because we had no option. Like there was no us to make it about us. We had no brand, no buildings, no discipleship process. We just prayed to God that people would show up the next Sunday. And I'm saying that because I don't ever want our church to lose that focus. That this is not about us. We're not standing up here today, year 17, telling stories about the good old days, but rather this is about us keeping our focus on what it really should be, reaching people who are far from God. And I don't know what you think about church today. I don't know what you came in thinking who the church is for. So can I just be very clear on our 17th birthday? Here's how I want to say it. That church is for you, but it's not about you. Some of y'all, you need to let that sit in. Church is for you, but this isn't about you. Here's what I mean by that. Like we are for you as a church. We are for your family. We are for your marriage. We are for your kids. We're for your finances. We are for you growing in your relationship with Jesus. We are for you discovering this John 10:10 full life that Jesus died for you to have. But this isn't about you. That we've been given the greatest mission in the world, the Great Commission, to go and reach the world, baptizing people in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to obey every command that I've given you. That's the mouth of Jesus. And so this message of love, hope, and forgiveness is actually the answer to the world's greatest problem, which is sin and separation from God. And the antidote is not a religious program. The antidote is a person, and his name is Jesus. Come on, do you still believe that Jesus changes lives? Does anybody still believe that Jesus is the answer? Yeah. So we can't sit on this message and start turning inward and making this about us. And so just know, hear my heart. We will always be for you. But if you're saved and you know this grace and you know this God personally, then this isn't about you. And when I think about the legacy of Lifepointe, when I think about the kind of church that I eventually will hand off to the next generation of leaders and the next generation of owners and church Lifepointers, I want to be a part of a movement, not a moment. I don't want to be a part of a moment. I want to be a part of a movement. And I believe that one of the ways that we make sure on our 17th birthday that our eyes are pointed to Jesus and our heart is for his people is through generosity. Look, it is really hard to be inwardly focused and generous. That we serve the most generous God. And one of the ways that we make sure going into our 17th year, this is what I feel like the Lord has impressed on my heart today for us, is that we need that this is the year for radical generosity. Not calculated giving, radical living. And so today, in honor of our 17th birthday, we're gonna do something. This is gonna make some of you nervous, some of you are gonna get excited. We're gonna do something that we've never done in the 17-year history as a church. And I'm gonna tell you what it is at the end of my message, all right? So you gotta hang out online, you gotta go with me. And the reason why I'm waiting to the very end is because if I told you up front, you would think that we're crazy, that we've lost our mind. So instead, let me lay a foundation and then I'll share with you what we're gonna do going into year 17. If you got a Bible, I hope you grab it. And let's go to Luke chapter 19 today. Let's go to Luke 19. If you're new to the Bible, Luke was not a follower of Jesus. Matter of fact, Luke was an investigator after Jesus died on the cross, resurrected. He was interviewing eyewitnesses within years of Jesus' resurrection to see if this Jesus truly was who he said he was. Luke was so convinced on his research that he actually dedicated his life, followed Jesus, became one of the first leaders in the New Testament church, and actually wrote the book of Acts. So very, very credible author that we're gonna be reading from today. And Luke 19 is maybe one of my favorite chapters in the life of Jesus for one reason. See, at this point, Jesus is heading towards Jerusalem. He's making his final descent to the city where eventually he will be arrested on charges and crimes that he did not commit. He will be murdered on a Roman torture device known as a cross. But ultimately, this is Jesus fulfilling his God-given purpose on this earth, that it would be his body broken, his blood shed for you and I, that he would become the atoning, covering sacrifice for all of our sin. For Christ did for us what we never could do for ourselves. You can't pay God back for all the wrong that you've done. And the beauty today is you don't have to. Salvation has already been had for you. All you got to do is reach out and receive it. That's good news right there, yeah. And so this is his purpose. So he's heading towards Jerusalem. And the reason why I love this is because Jesus knows his days are numbered. And so he's like really direct. He doesn't mix his words. He is focused. You ever seen somebody and they got that crazy eye? Yeah, you're laughing because you're like, yeah, I've seen that before. That's what I envisioned Jesus walked around with that crazy eye the whole time like this. And so he did this little detour. He stops in a city called Jericho because he had a divine appointment with a man who was actually hiding, climbing up in a tree, a guy by the name of Zacchaeus. And if you're from a church background, you probably knew this story from VBS, but Zacchaeus wasn't really a VBS model story. He was, a chief tax collector. This dude ran a corrupt empire, maybe one of the most wealthiest people in early ancient Judaism. And he looks up at Zacchaeus and he calls him down from the tree. He says, Zach, you better go tell the servants to fire up dinner because I'm coming to your house to have a meal. Which in Jewish culture, this is like, because a meal identified with another person. It was Jesus' way of saying, I not only approve of Zacchaeus, but I approve of everything that he is. And of course, you can only imagine these religious leaders, they didn't like it. They had no box to put Jesus in. And he has this meal, and we really don't know much about the dinner. All we know is the response that at some point as Zacchaeus is having dinner with the light of the world, he sees the goodness of God. He gives his life to Jesus. And then the next part is what was shocking. He stood up and he made this announcement. He said, hey, right here and now, I'm about to give back twice as much as I've taken from every single person. In other words, Zacchaeus is announcing, I'm going broke. And of course, I can only imagine some of his dinner buddies, his minions, his crew are probably like, what are you doing? Jesus didn't ask you to give up all this money. But see, this is the power of it. When you get a glimpse of who God is, it will make you do things that don't make sense to everybody else. Hey, I think some of us, one of our problems is we're more concerned about being understood by others instead of being obedient to God. Oh, I'm feeling loose today on year 17. It's been 2 weeks since I've preached. This is some of our problem, that we find our validation and our sort of solidity from other people, and yet we're never gonna be used to build the kingdom of God. Can I tell you something, church? One of the reasons why Lifepointe, we're going into our 17th year thriving like we are, is because we've just done a bunch of things that did not make sense to the world around us. I don't know about you, but I don't want to live an understood life. And so Zacchaeus in this moment encounters grace, and he says, well, money doesn't have the worth that it used to. So there's this big uproar, and I think Jesus was probably like, all right, everybody chill out. Let me kind of explain through a story what just happened in Zacchaeus' heart. So he tells him this parable in Luke 19, right after Zacchaeus has this incredible conversion moment, and he tells him a parable. Now, if you're new to the Bible, a parable is simply an earthly story that has a heavenly meaning. So here's what Jesus says, now that we know the context. Luke 19, starting in verse 12, says this, Jesus said, a man of noble birth went to a distant country to have himself appointed king and then to return. So he called his 10 servants and he gave to them 10 minas. That's an important word. And he said to these servants, put this money to work, he said, until I come back. Now, a mina, just very quickly, was an amount of money. One mina was about 10 days worth of wages. He gives them each 10. He's basically giving all 10 servants 100 days worth of salary. And the point is that this is a large amount of money that this master is entrusting to his servants. So then he goes on and he comes back and he schedules a one-on-one, and he wants to know, what did you do with my money, with what I gave you? Verse 16. So the first one came and he said, sir, check it out. Your mina has earned 10 more. Notice what the master says. Well done, good servant. His master replied, because you've been trustworthy in very small matters, take charge of 10 cities. Notice that. He got back far more than what the master ever gave him. He's like, you're gonna be over these 10 cities. Then verse 18, the second came and he said, sir, your mina has earned 5 more. And his master answered, you take charge now of 5 cities. And then another servant came and he says, sir, here it is, here's your mina. I've kept it, laid away in a piece of cloth. I was afraid of you because you're a hard man. You take what you did not put in and you reap what you did not sow. So basically this servant is like, listen, I know how this works, and you're a hard master, and you reap where you don't sow, and you take out what you did not put in. And so here's what I figured I would do. If I was gonna have to do all the work anyways, only for you to come back and demand it back, I'm not gonna do the work. So here you go, here's your original investment. And I wonder today, how many times do we have that exact same conversation between ourselves and God? Now, I know you're a good Southern Christian. You would never admit that out loud. But I wonder how many of us, this has sort of been our posture towards God. God, you're a hard God. Maybe that's the church or the background that you grew up in. You're a mean God. You're a legalistic God. I mean, I don't even understand why you want my money and my time and my stuff anyways. I mean, last time I checked, I was the one that earned it. When I was in college studying, you weren't there at night whispering the answers into my ear. I had to do that. When I went out and started my career, it was me who made the business deal. I made the transaction. I took the risk. I started the company. I brokered the deal. And so I just figure, since I'm the one that put in all the hours and all the energy, then everything that I have should be mine. Oh, it's quiet online. I don't know what it's like in your house. It is really quiet in this place right now. Because isn't this what we do? But think about the center of that language, me, mine, I. And we easily forget, how easily we forget that everything we have belongs to God. That God, you own everything, and I am simply a manager called to manage what you have entrusted with me. And so I want you to listen to the language that the master says to this servant who did not multiply what he had originally given him. Now, I'll be honest with you, there are parts of the Bible that I wish were not in there. But just because I wish it wasn't in there doesn't mean we don't need to read it. Listen to what he says. Verse 22, his master replied, I will judge you by your own words. You, what's that word? Wicked servant. You knew? Hold up, you knew? Did you? That I'm a hard man, taking out what I did not put in, reaping where I did not sow? Why then did you not put the money on deposit so that when I get back, I could collect it with interest? Then he said to those standing by, take this mina away from him and give it to the one who has 10 minas. Notice verse 22. He said, you wicked servant. Yo, when I read that, I thought to myself, wait a minute, he didn't call him lazy. He didn't call him disobedient. He actually called him wicked. Like, doesn't that seem like an overstatement? Maybe a little bit of a stretch. Like, I mean, at least he returned the money. I mean, it's not like he lost the money and you're still using this word wicked. Because when I think of wicked, when I think of somebody who's wicked, I think of somebody who like hurts somebody, that's wicked. I think of people who own cats, that's, I mean, right? Like, wait a minute, this guy, all the cat lovers are, all he did was hold on to it and he gave it right back. Why is he calling him? What a strong word to use. Can I tell you why I think? I think it's because this life, this breath that you just took, this is God's gift to you. And what you do with this life is your gift back to God. This life, this time, this talent, the abilities, the influence, the family, yes, the financial resources, every single day that you get up and you have air in your lungs, oh, what a gift God has given to you and I. And what you choose to do with that time and with those talents and with that treasure, that is your gift back to God. That's why Paul says in Romans chapter 12, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice back to God, as your act of worship. That, hey, it's great. We just sang some great worship songs and we're worshiping now through the word. But your greatest worship is what happens all throughout this week. It's what you do with your life back to God. I think the reason why he used the word wicked is because when it comes to your relationship with Jesus, it comes down to this one word, trust. Do you trust that God really is your provider? Now, before you're quick to answer that, I want you to take an internal audit of your actions. Do your actions portray that you actually trust God? Do you trust him with your kids? Do you trust him with your time? Do you trust him with your energy? That the more that you pour out, God's just gonna supply back? Do you trust him with your financial resources? That actually, tithing is easy because none of it belongs to me. I'm just returning the first 10 back to you. But God, I know that I can't outgive you. The more that I pour out, the more that you bless me with. See, this is the realization that Zacchaeus had. Zacchaeus had a realization in a moment that takes a lot of us a lifetime that if I can trust Jesus with my eternal salvation, then I can trust him with my financial portfolio. The problem for some of us is we're more likely to trust him with our salvation than we are our money. And in that moment, everything began to change. So here's the bottom line. You ready? I want you to write this down. This is the bottom line. You can't sit on your assets and expect to change the world. Okay. Get the religion off, shake the religion off. Yeah, I meant that both ways. I didn't stutter. You can't sit on your assets and expect to change the world. Lifepointe Church, we can't sit on all that God has given us, all that God has blessed us with, all that God has done in our lives. We are called year 17 to be a blessing to other people. We can't sit on our assets and expect to make a difference in this world. Do you believe that today? Yeah, God has equipped you. He's given to you, not for you, but to ultimately be a blessing to others. We got to get off our assets and start actually doing something. That's what Zacchaeus understood. And that's what made him radically shift everything, because money didn't have the same value. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're like, all right, Pastor, this is cute. I know where this is going now. Okay, this is the part of the service. I've been a part of these. We're going to pass an offering plate because the only way that we can be a good manager, we're the managers in the story, is if we give financially to the church. If that's what you think, you're mistaken. Instead, today, we're actually going to give you money. You heard that right. We're actually going to put money in your hands in a minute. Here's what we're going to do. You'll notice down here we have tables that have baskets on them, and inside of every basket is an envelope that looks like this. And that's because today we are starting as a church a 5-week journey that we're calling the Mina Project. In other words, instead of just reading this story, singing a song, and going home, I think, this is just me, I'm crazy. If God actually holds this much accountability and importance to this wicked servant, why don't we actually live this out as a church? Let's make this story come to life. So in a moment here, in just a few seconds, you're gonna have an opportunity to kind of stand up, come down here, and grab an envelope. Now, it's one per person, meaning if you're here with your spouse, both of you grab one. If your teenagers are in the room with you, if your elementary age kid wants to participate, you can grab a couple envelopes. Maybe you're here, but your spouse is home or serving. Grab an envelope for them. That's fine. I'm gonna grab a couple envelopes for my family as well. So one per person. We want your family to participate. And inside of that envelope, you're gonna notice there are 2 things in the envelope. One is an instruction card called the Mina Project. So everything I'm about to tell you, don't worry, it's right here on this card. And if you lose the card or you forget, just go to our website, lifepointecc.com, click the Mina tab. All of it and more will be on our website. And the second thing that's gonna be in your envelope is an amount of money. And it's gonna be a 50, a 20, or a 10. I literally just happened to grab one of these before service, and this is a 20. And so what we're asking you to do over the next 5 weeks is to take that money and figure out a way to multiply it for the kingdom. See, there's really 4 parts to this story. There's the master, that's Jesus, that's God. There's the servants, there's the managers, that's you and me. There's Mina, that represents financial resources. And then there's this 4th one that we don't like, and that's accountability. Did you notice how the master came back and he held them all accountable? What did you do with what I gave you? See, I feel like part of my role as your pastor is not just to help you get the most out of this life, but is ultimately to prepare you for the next life. And one of the principles that I teach all the time out of Revelation is that every single one of us, even if you're a follower of Jesus, you will stand in front of the judgment seat of Christ, and you will be asked this question: what did you do with what I gave you? Hey, that gift called life, what'd you do with all that time? All those resources, all that energy? How did you use that to bring more people into the kingdom? And so we just figured, what would happen if we went into our 17th year and we all saw ourselves as a manager and we multiplied? Imagine what we could do. Now, I know you're smart, I know you're intelligent. There's a lot of different ways, endless ways that you can take the money in the envelope, and you can begin to multiply it. Let me just share a few things with you. Number one, don't do this by yourself. Do this as a family, grab some friends. If you're in a life group, think of it this way. If you're actually in a life group, maybe you only get a $10 bill, but everybody collectively in your life group comes together, pulls all their Mina money. You might have $200. And maybe you do a garage sale and you use 100% of the proceeds to go back to the Mina project. I know for my kids this past summer, they did a lemonade stand. Check this out. The supplies for the lemonade stand cost like $20. They made $200. Yeah, in like 4 hours. So it pays when you're cute and you're 9 and you're like, people are just shelling money, all right? I don't recommend doing a lemonade stand if you're 50. That's so weird, all right? And if you do it and you have a sign that says Mina for Lifepointe, we will act like we don't know you, okay? So don't get the cops called. So but maybe you get your kids involved and they do a lemonade stand. Maybe you love to play poker and you do a charity poker event and you grab your money in your envelope and get some buddies and use that as the prize money or the supplies for the night. Maybe you use the money to buy cleaning supplies and use the cleaning supplies and you go to your friend's house and say, hey, for $50, make a donation. It's gonna go to the Mina and I'll clean your house for you. Maybe you're a teenager and you use that money to fill up a can of gas and you go mow lawns. Do you see this? Maybe you like to bake stuff or make stuff. I mean, there's endless ways that you can say, all right, Lord, I see what you're doing here. You've trusted me with this thing called money, and now I want to multiply it for your kingdom. And here's the cool part. After 5 weeks, on October the 17th, we're all gonna come back together, and we're all gonna return not just what's in the envelope, but also the money that you grew, how you multiplied it, and then 100% of what we give collectively, we're giving away right back to our ministry partners. Matter of fact, it's gonna go to 2 specific things. One, part of it's gonna go to Stadia Church planting. If you know Lifepointe, you know that we are all about planting difference-making, gospel-centered churches. Stadia was the church planting organization that started Lifepointe 17 years ago. Every year we invest right back into Stadia because of your financial giving already. We give a portion of that back to different partners. One of those is Stadia. And so every year we help plant hundreds of churches that see thousands of people come to Christ and get baptized. And we just say, we want more of that. I want more of that. I want to see more new churches started, more people discipled. It is statistically proven that starting new churches is the greatest way to reach people who don't know God. So a portion of what you're going to give, we're going to bless Stadia Church planting. The second part's going to stay right here in our community. The second part of that money is going to go right here to at-risk teenagers and kids in our community. You know that we're a part of the Rock Hill Children's Detention Home, Defending the Fatherless. There's an after-school program for at-risk middle school kids that we are actively a part of, and we're gonna bless families like crazy. So think about this. Here's what we're gonna do. In a moment, you're gonna stand up, you're gonna come down, grab an envelope. Today, we're probably gonna give somewhere around $12,000 away in cash. We're entrusting it to you. As God's owner, as God's manager. Can you imagine if we turn that 12 grand into 25? Maybe we could turn it into 50. Some of you might get crazy and we turn this thing into $75,000. Can you imagine the blessing that that's gonna be to our partners? And I just love this today because on our 17th anniversary, we're not up here telling stories of the good old days. We're not building a monument, patting ourselves on the back, spiking the football, saying we did it, look at us. No. What we're saying is there's so much more work yet to be done. And we're just getting started. And you get to be a part of it, and so do I. So this is our moment. So I just want to invite you, would you stand to your feet? And let me explain how this is gonna work. I know you feel the tension right now. You're like, man, like 5 weeks, another thing, I know. Can I slip out the back? But you know, the tension's already here. We're already doing this. This is an opportunity for us to step outside of ourselves and to start, let's live out Luke 19. And let's say, God, use me to be a difference. No excuses. It's right here. Come down, grab an envelope. Let me pray. We're gonna worship. We're gonna sing. And let's move. Jesus, we thank you so much for your goodness. God, this radical generosity comes from the fact that you are radically generous to us. You didn't pay for a fraction of my sin. This isn't like layaway where you pay a little bit up front and then if I'm good enough, maybe your grace will cover me on the back end of my life. No. All at once transaction. You forgave me, past, present, future. My God, What a God. And so Lord, today we want to be generous and we want to be that to other people. You even trusted us. And so God, we thank you for that. Right now, as we move as a church and we start these next 5 weeks, it's not about the money. It's about what you want to do in our heart. You want us to be available to you. So here we are. We're available. We can't wait to see what you're going to do. We love you. We praise in your name.